I woke up early that day, a mix of nerves and anticipation swirling inside me. I carefully chose my best outfit and stood in front of my bedroom mirror. Since being on my own, finding a job had become not just a necessity but a way to rebuild my life, piece by piece. And today was the day of a crucial interview. 4 days ago, while browsing online, I found an ad that seemed like a light at the end of the tunnel. A position for a personal caregiver to an elderly man, offered by the Jones family, one of the most influential in the region. I applied the moment I saw the ad, and despite the tight grip of my vulnerable situation, I allowed myself to feel a flicker of hope. The day before, I received a call confirming the interview. I left the house, walked to the bus stop, my mind filled with thoughts. I took the bus and watched the landscape through the window as I reflected. My thoughts inevitably drifted to the day my world fell apart. My husband, the man I loved and trusted more than anyone, had left without a trace. Even worse, he took our daughter, little Anna, with him, leaving only silence and a void that seemed to consume everything. This act of abandonment came with no explanations or farewells. It was a clean, brutal cut in the life we had built together. I wondered how things had reached this point. I remembered small signs of tension, moments when conversations became shorter and glances more distant, but never imagined those cracks in our relationship would lead to such a complete rupture. The pain of abandonment was a constant companion, a reminder of everything that was lost. Yet, deep down, I knew I needed to move on, and this was my chance. I got off at the nearest stop to my destination. As soon as I arrived on the street, I felt like I had entered another world. The mansions along the road were enormous, surrounded by high walls and imposing gates, each boasting a meticulously maintained garden visible from the sidewalk. I walked slowly down the street, my heart racing as I searched for the correct number, unable to shake the feeling of displacement. How could I fit into a place like this? I wondered. Finally, I arrived at the indicated address, stopping in front of the gates of a small palace. I pressed the doorbell button, and it wasn't long before the gate opened. I was greeted by the house's butler. "Good morning, Miss Harris. We've been expecting you. Please follow me," he said in a soft voice. I followed the butler through the imposing corridors of the mansion, each step increasing my anxiety. As I arrived at Cameron Jones's office, the butler gently knocked on the door and announced clearly, "Mr. Jones, Miss Sophie Harris is here for the interview." A voice from behind the door replied, "Please, come in." Once inside, the butler exited, leaving Cameron and me alone. Cameron stood by the desk, his face lit with a warm smile. "Good morning, Sophie. I'm Cameron Jones. Please, have a seat," he said, gesturing towards a chair. I noticed his kindness, which helped to ease my nerves just a bit. "Thank you, Mr. Jones. I am very grateful for this opportunity," I replied as I took my seat. I tried to stay composed, though inside, I was battling waves of anxiety that threatened my calm. Cameron then sat down, his gaze both evaluative and gentle as he looked at me. "Sophie, first, I'd like to learn a bit more about you. Specifically, tell me about your experience with caregiving." I took a deep breath and mentally reviewed the points I had prepared. Yes, in recent years, I've been caring for my grandmother. Sadly, she recently passed away. She had Alzheimer's, so I gained quite intensive, personal experience in daily care. Additionally, I worked in a nursing home for a time, where I honed my skills in elderly care. This included managing medications, assisting with daily activities, and providing emotional support. The conversation continued, with Cameron asking detailed questions and me giving my best possible answers. As we spoke, my confidence grew. Despite my initial nervousness, I felt the interview was going well. When it ended, Cameron stood up and extended his hand to me. "I'm truly impressed, Sophie. Your answers were well thought out. Please wait a little while, and we'll be in touch soon. His approving tone brought a smile of relief and satisfaction to my lips. I stood up and shook his hand. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Mr. Jones. I'm truly excited about the possibility of working with your family. As I left the office, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in a long time. The chance of landing the job and his initial approval filled me with hope. But as I walked down the hallway towards the exit, my optimistic thoughts were interrupted when I bumped into a man. He looked a lot like Cameron, so he was probably his brother, but his expression and demeanor were nothing like Cameron's kindness. He looked at me with a mix of surprise and irritation. "Watch where you're going," he said bluntly. Before I could apologize, he continued, his voice carrying a dark warning. "I hear you're a candidate for the caregiver position? Listen up. I don't know what my brothers said, but believe me, you don't want this job. Working here is hell." "But why?" "I thought it was just a caregiving job," I asked uncertainly. I was bewildered by the sudden shift in perspective and didn't know how to handle his warning. "You thought it was that simple? That my family is perfect? Far from it. My father is a difficult man, you know? And the situation here is complicated. I'm just telling you this because I don't want to see a good person like you get caught up in our problems." His sincerity and the worried look on his face only added to my confusion. I thanked him and said I would think it over, then continued walking. As I left the estate, I couldn't stop thinking about the man's words. What had seemed like a blessing at first, the chance to work for the Jones family, was now tainted with doubt and uncertainty. What could be so bad to warrant such a direct warning? Still, it didn't deter me from accepting the opportunity. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the window. My thoughts immediately turned to the possibility of receiving a call with the job offer. Despite the warning I'd received the day before, the need for financial stability and the hope for a new beginning spoke louder to me. I tried to distract myself with household chores, but my heart raced every time the phone rang. Finally, after what felt like hours, the phone rang again. I ran to the phone, my hand trembling slightly. "Hello?" I managed to keep my voice steady, though anxiety laced it. "Sophie, this is Cameron Jones. I'm calling to let you know that after our conversation and evaluation, we've decided that you're a perfect fit for the caregiver position in our family. If possible, we'd like you to start next Monday," Cameron said. His calm, friendly voice washed over me like a wave of relief and joy. "Yes, of course. I'll be there. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Mr. Jones." "I'm truly grateful and looking forward to starting," I responded. My voice now brimmed with emotion and gratitude. Despite the doubts and warnings from the previous day, the joy of being chosen and the prospect of a new beginning were undeniable. "Wonderful, Sophie. We're excited to have you. When you arrive on Monday, please ask for me. I'll explain your responsibilities and how things work here. In the meantime, if you have any questions or need anything, don't hesitate to reach out," Cameron continued, making sure I felt welcomed and like part of the team. On Monday, as the sun was just beginning to rise, I made extra preparations for my first day on the job. I dressed carefully in my best outfit, choosing something that was both comfortable and presentable. I knew how important first impressions could be. When I arrived at the estate, the butler who had been waiting greeted me with a nod and a slight smile. "Good morning, Ms. Harris. Welcome. I'll show you to Mr. Cameron's office," he said, leading me through the impeccably maintained corridors of the estate. I took in every detail, absorbing the nuances of my new work environment. Upon reaching the office, Cameron was already standing, as if he had been expecting me. "Good morning, Sophie. I'm glad to see you. Are you ready to get started? Let's go see my father. I'll explain your responsibilities in more detail along the way, he said with a warm smile, easing some of the tension I felt. As we walked towards his father's room, Cameron began to detail the daily tasks I would be handling. Cameron explained to me, my father, Donald, has set times for his meals. Breakfast is at 8 a.m., lunch is at noon, and dinner is at 7 p.m. It's important to stick to these times as it helps his routine. His tone was serious but gentle, conveying the significance of each detail. For his medication, it needs to be taken 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and before bed. I'll provide you with a detailed list of times and dosages. Bathing is best done after breakfast in the morning. He's quite independent, but he needs supervision to prevent falls, Cameron continued, showing his genuine concern for his father's health. I listened carefully, mentally noting each instruction. The weight of my responsibility felt heavy, yet my resolve to do the best job possible grew stronger. Understood, Mr. Cameron. I'm ready to do what is necessary to assist your father. You can count on me, I replied. My voice was firm, conveying my dedication to the role I was about to undertake. When we arrived at Donald's room, Cameron paused for a moment before opening the door. Father might be a bit reserved at first, but I'm sure he'll come to like you. Just give it some time, he said with an encouraging smile. Upon entering the room, I was immediately struck by Donald's quiet presence. He was seated in an armchair, reading a book. Though his eyes followed the text, he turned his gaze towards us, acknowledging our arrival. Cameron approached with a smile, clearly respecting his father's space and pace. Dad, I'd like to introduce you to Ms. Sophie Harris. She's the new caregiver. Sophie, this is my father, Donald. Cameron said with affection in his voice. Donald appraised me with a steady gaze and gave a slight nod in greeting. His deep, gravelly voice broke the silence. Pleased to meet you, Sophie. After a brief nod to me, Cameron indicated that he would leave us to get acquainted and stepped out of the room. The moment of silence that followed was soon interrupted by Donald's questions, revealing his lingering uncertainty. So, Sophie. What brought you here? Why did you decide to care for someone like me? I felt the weight of the question and the importance of starting on good terms. With sincerity and a gentle smile, I answered, caring for others has always been one of the most important things we can do, Mr. Jones. During the last years of my grandmother's life, I learned a lot about compassion and patience by taking care of her. When I saw the opportunity to work with you, I felt this was where I was meant to be. Mr. Jones listened intently. His analytical gaze softened. And do you think you're ready to deal with a stubborn old man like me? His question carried a light, joking tone, subtly testing my attitude and sense of humor. Yes, I think so, Mr. Jones. We all have good days and bad days. My intention is to be here for you on both kinds of days. And as for stubbornness, I paused and smiled, a little challenge just makes the job more interesting. My response brought a brief smile to Mr. Jones' face. It was a sign that the initial skepticism might be beginning to change into mutual respect. I was starting to adjust to the new environment and get used to the daily routines of the house while conversing with Mr. Jones. Though he had started off with distrust, he was beginning to enjoy the conversation. I was determined to earn his trust not just as a caregiver, but as someone who genuinely cared. As lunchtime approached, I prepared to bring Mr. Jones his meal. I said a brief goodbye and promised to return soon with something delicious. As I made my way to the kitchen, I mentally reviewed the tasks for the day and was satisfied that everything had been going well so far. But what I didn't expect was the impending encounter with Cameron's brother. It was about to turn my peaceful day into one of tension. While bringing the meal tray back to Donald's room, I encountered Cameron's brother in the hallway. He was walking towards me. Before I could react, he awkwardly bumped into me, causing me to lose my balance and spill the tray. The clatter of the tray and dishes echoed through the hallway, signaling the start of an unexpected conflict. "Watch where you're going," I shouted in frustration, bending down to pick up the scattered items. So, there I was, shocked by the incident but determined not to give in to provocation. Instead of offering help or even an apology, he had just laughed provocatively. "Looks like the new caregiver isn't very skilled. You might want to reconsider your employment," he said, clearly enjoying the situation. I felt a rush of indignation but forced myself to remain calm. "A gentleman would help rather than make unnecessary comments," I replied, trying to maintain my composure as I picked up the scattered tray. "Here isn't the place to show weakness. If you want to survive in this house, you'd better get used to it," he retorted with a sarcastic smile. The sound of the tray hitting the floor quickly drew Cameron's attention. He appeared in the hallway, his expression immediately shifting to frustration as he surveyed the scene. "What happened here?" he demanded, glancing back and forth between his brother, Daniel, and me. Before I could explain, Daniel shrugged dismissively, trying to downplay the incident. But Cameron wasn't going to overlook Daniel's behavior without a reprimand. "Daniel, this is unacceptable. You know full well you should be more careful and respectful," Cameron said, clearly angry at his brother's attitude. Turning back to me, Cameron's expression softened. "Sophie, I'm really sorry. My brother Daniel sometimes forgets his manners. Please don't let this incident bother you," he said, his voice carrying a sincere apology. "I'll get someone to clean this up, and please go to the kitchen and prepare another tray for Dad. Don't worry about this," he added. I was still a bit shaken by the encounter, but I appreciated Cameron's intervention and nodded in gratitude as I headed back to the kitchen. Cameron's willingness to stand up for me and resolve the situation made me feel valued and respected, despite the uncomfortable encounter with Daniel. A little while later, I was walking down the hallway with the newly prepared tray, paying close attention to every step. That's when I heard the sound of a heated argument. I paused momentarily, recognizing the voices coming from a partially open room. It was Cameron and Daniel. Curiosity and concern got the better of me, and I approached cautiously. I couldn't ignore the urgency in their conversation. "Daniel, you're not thinking clearly. He deserves all the care and respect in his later years. We can't simply ignore his needs," Cameron insisted, his voice filled with emotion and determination. On the other hand, Daniel appeared impatient and dismissive. "Cameron, thinking of delaying the inevitable as a form of respect is naive. Our lives would be better if we address this practically and move forward," Daniel argued. "This isn't just a matter of inconvenience, it's about his life. You don't get to treat his needs as a mere obstacle," Cameron replied, clearly shocked and angry at Daniel's suggestion. "I won't allow you to treat Father's life as just an obstacle," Cameron emphasized. Daniel responded with a bitter laugh. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "Life? Is this what you call life? He's spending his last days. His muscles are deteriorating more and more, and his heart problems are worsening. Not to mention his kidney disease. These are issues of aging, and we all know he doesn't have much time left. Honestly, continuing these futile treatments is draining our resources and patience. The sooner things come to their natural end, the better for everyone." Cameron's voice shook with anger and sadness as he responded. "I can't believe you're saying such things," he said. "Our responsibility is to care for him and ensure he has everything needed to live his remaining days with dignity. No matter the cost, I will not abandon him." "Oh, dignity. A convenient concept when you want to avoid harsh, cold realities. Fine, Cameron, do as you please. But I'm not going to watch this tragedy unfold. When everything falls apart, don't say I didn't warn you, Daniel concluded with a contemptuous tone. His disdain for Donald's well-being was unmistakable. Hearing this exchange, I felt a mix of shock and sorrow. I quietly walked away, overwhelmed by worry about the complex family dynamics and how they would affect my job and Donald's life. At the end of that long, thought-provoking day, I couldn't shake the arguments between Cameron and Daniel from my mind. My feelings were a tangled mess of concern and curiosity, and I resolved to find some answers. After finishing my work, I headed to Cameron's office, softly knocking on the door before entering. Cameron looked up, clearly surprised to see me. "Cameron, can we talk for a moment?" I began, trying to sound firm despite my hesitation. "I overheard the argument between you and your brother earlier, and I'm worried about what this means for your father and all of us." Cameron sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of stress. "Sophie, I didn't want to involve you, but since you've already heard, I think you have a right to know the truth. Daniel is pushing to end Dad's intensive care and speed up the inheritance process." My heart ached at his words. But why? Why would anyone want to do such a thing to their own father? "It's complicated," Cameron said. "Daniel believes that waiting for the inheritance is delaying his own life. Cameron told me that Daniel wants to sell their family business as quickly as possible. He wants to do it to fund his lavish lifestyle. The problem is, their company isn't just a business, it's part of their legacy. Through their company, they've helped many charities and people in need. If Daniel gets his way, all of that will come to an end." Cameron spoke with a clear sense of concern in his voice. I could feel my heart tighten at the thought of it all coming to an end. "Isn't there anything we can do to stop this?" I asked, my voice trembling with frustration and fear. Cameron said he's trying to find a solution that would protect both Donald's well-being and the future of the company. But he mentioned that Daniel is very stubborn and aggressive about this issue. Cameron just wants to make sure their company doesn't lose its soul in the process. He looked at me with a plea for understanding in his eyes. I nodded, feeling the weight of Cameron's dilemma. "If there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. I may just be a caregiver, but I care deeply about your family and the people your company helps." Cameron gave me a sad smile. "Thank you, Sophie. Your offer means a lot to me. For now, I just need you to keep taking excellent care of Dad as you've been doing. Having someone reliable by his side is a great comfort." While Cameron was expressing his gratitude, he was suddenly hit by a violent coughing fit. He hunched over, each cough echoing painfully around the office. He pressed his hand to his chest, as if trying to ease the invisible pain. My caregiving instincts kicked in, and I quickly pulled a handkerchief from my pocket and offered it to him. Cameron, trying to catch his breath between coughs, reached out for the handkerchief but instead found my hand. For a moment, we both seemed surprised by the unexpected contact. His hand gently enveloped mine, sharing a moment of warmth amidst the small confusion. Despite his discomfort, he tried to manage a smile. "Are you all right?" I asked with a voice full of genuine concern. The strength of the moment enveloped us both, and as his coughing began to subside, a worried silence filled the space between us. "Yes, I'm okay. Thank you," Cameron said, finally catching his breath and letting go of my hand. He looked at me with a touch of embarrassment, as if feeling self-conscious about his sudden weakness. "I'm sorry. My health isn't in the best shape. It's making running the company and other things a bit more complicated." At that moment, Cameron realized he was still holding my hand. He quickly withdrew, his face turning a deep red. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." Well, I didn't notice, he stammered, clearly uncomfortable with the lapse in etiquette. I gave a gentle smile, trying to ease the tension. There's no need to apologize, Cameron. I understand. If there's anything I can do here, besides taking care of your father, please let me know. My sincere tone and warm look helped soften the awkward moment. Though it was a brief exchange, a surprising connection formed between us, marked by shared empathy and concern. Cameron, still a bit embarrassed, thanked me again. Sophie, you're doing so much. Just knowing I can rely on you brings me a great sense of relief. After parting ways with Cameron, I walked down the corridor with mixed feelings of gratitude and worry. My thoughts were consumed by the day's revelations when suddenly, Daniel appeared in front of me, blocking my path. His smile struck me as insincere and menacing. Sophie, wait a moment. I wanted to apologize about earlier, Daniel began, his voice laced with a charm that made me doubt his sincerity. I stopped and stared at him, maintaining a neutral expression as I waited for him to continue. I accept your apology, I replied curtly. I hope to move on without further interference. But it seemed Daniel had other plans. Sophie, I've noticed something about you. When you're angry, you're even cuter, he said, inching closer with an unmistakable hint of flirtation. It was clear he was trying to make advances. I felt a wave of discomfort and irritation. Is that supposed to make me happy? I asked, crossing my arms and stepping back, clearly rejecting his advances. Daniel's laughter didn't seem to waver in the face of my coldness. Don't be so chilly. I'm just trying to make amends. We might get to know each other better, you know, he suggested with an overly wide smile. I felt my patience reaching its breaking point. Daniel, I'm here to work, not to get to know you better. I'd appreciate it if you could respect me and maintain a professional relationship, I stated firmly, emphasizing my rejection and discomfort with the situation. Daniel, realizing that his attempts were not only futile but probably harmful, shrugged his shoulders. All right, Sophie. It was just a suggestion. No need to be so defensive, he said with a final note of nonchalance and stepped aside to let me pass. I hurried away, eager to leave the estate and the unpleasant encounter behind me. As I walked away, one certainty crystallized in my mind. I had a complete aversion to Daniel. But I hadn't expected my anger to be so intense. The next morning, I faced an unexpected challenge. While bringing breakfast to Donald, he expressed his growing concern about the future of the family business. In a thin but urgent voice, he said, Sophie, promise me you won't let Daniel sell the company. It's something I've built my life around. I was moved by his trust, but I tried to gently explain my position. Mr. Jones, I wish I could help more, but my influence here is very limited. I'm just a caregiver, I said, trying to keep my voice calm and composed. At that moment, Daniel appeared at the doorway with an arrogant smile, interrupting our conversation. Without a word, he pretended to stumble near the auxiliary table where Donald's medications were arranged, deliberately dropping and breaking one of the bottles on the floor. Oh, how clumsy of me, he said sarcastically, clearly enjoying the chaos he had caused. I felt my patience evaporate. That's completely unacceptable. Daniel, please leave, I demanded, keeping my voice strong. Inside, I was boiling with anger. But Daniel remained unfazed. Hey, Sophie, do you really think you have any authority here? The last caregiver who tried to meddle in family matters didn't last long. You probably won't last either, he said, his eyes carrying an unmistakable menace. The tension between us was palpable, and I knew I had to stay calm not just for myself but also for Donald, who was watching the scene with a mix of confusion and concern. I'm here to take care of your father, and I will continue to do so regardless of what is said, I replied, meeting Daniel's gaze with resolve. As Daniel's smile faded, realizing his provocation wasn't having the desired effect, he shrugged. "We'll see how long you can hold out," he said before leaving the room, leaving behind an atmosphere thick with tension. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself before refocusing my attention on Donald. No matter what challenges Daniel threw at me, I had promised to protect Donald. After a day filled with Daniel's provocations and incidents, I was exhausted and frustrated. I couldn't tolerate such behavior without taking a stand, so I headed firmly to Cameron's office. Before entering, I knocked firmly on the door. Cameron, noticing the tense expression on my face, immediately got up from his chair, showing a look of concern. "Cameron, we need to talk about Daniel." "I don't know what to do," I began, my voice trembling slightly with a mix of anger and fatigue. "He's been teasing me all day, deliberately bumping into me, dropping things, and making inappropriate advances. I'm here to care for your father, not to deal with this." Cameron sighed, visibly troubled by the situation, and ran his hand through his hair. "Sophie, I'm truly sorry you're going through this. I know Daniel's behavior can be challenging. I'll speak with him and make sure he understands that such behavior is unacceptable." "Cameron, I appreciate your support, but do you really think talking to him will make a difference? He seems to respect no one in this house, let alone me," I responded, beginning to feel a sense of despair. "All I want is to work peacefully without the constant worry of being harassed." Cameron approached me, mixing sympathy and determination in his expression, and said, "Sophie, I promise you, I will handle this personally. I have no intention of letting Daniel continue this behavior. You are now an important part of this house, and I want you to feel safe and respected here." He tried to reassure me with a warm smile, aiming to convey his sincerity. I was still worried, but I felt a bit of relief from Cameron's words. "Thank you, Cameron. I truly hope things get better." Nodding wearily, I bade him farewell and left the office. After such a challenging day, I was feeling a glimmer of hope.
After Sophie had said goodbye to Cameron, he carried the weight of the situation on his shoulders as he headed to visit his father's room for the evening. When he entered, he found Donald sitting in an armchair, gazing out the window with a pensive look. "Father, did you notice anything strange today?" Sophie seemed quite stressed. Cameron cautiously broached the topic. Donald turned to his son, worry etched in his tired eyes. "Yes, I did. She's been under a lot of stress lately. It seems Daniel is trying to push her out just like he did with the previous caregiver." Despite his frail health, Donald was keenly aware of the family dynamics. Cameron sighed in frustration, feeling the weight of the problem. "That's right. I want to resolve this, but I don't know how to proceed. Daniel is becoming increasingly aggressive, and I'm worried about Sophie's well-being as well as yours." Donald fell silent for a moment, reflecting on the situation. "If Daniel continues this behavior, he'll not only push Sophie out but could ruin everything we've built. We need a plan to protect the company and ensure the safe future of the team that depends on us, including you too." "A plan?" Cameron repeated, intrigued by his father's suggestion. "Do you have something in mind? Let's turn this situation to our advantage. We need to show Daniel that there are consequences to his actions and that he cannot manipulate people to his will. It might be time to review the conditions of the inheritance and implement some protective measures. Furthermore, we need to ensure that Sophie feels safe and supported here. If she leaves due to Daniel's attitude, not only will we lose a valuable caregiver, but it will also give Daniel the impression that he can control the house as he pleases," Donald explained. His voice was weak, but each word was filled with determination. Cameron listened intently, weighing every possibility that his father's advice might open up. "That's right, Dad," Cameron said. "I'll talk to the lawyer. I'll meet with the family attorney tomorrow and see what can be done to legally protect our company and home." And I'll make sure Sophie knows she's safe with us. But there's still one problem. I can't run the company on my own. I need someone on my side to help. Given my health, I can't afford to overextend myself. Donald nodded, understanding his concern. I have a suggestion. It might sound a bit unusual, but Sophie has shown exceptional strength and character. She possesses insights and understanding of people that many lack. Moreover, her loyalty to our family in such a short time is noteworthy. With proper training, she could become the partner you need. But what about managing the inheritance? If Daniel loses his position in the will, all the company documents, the money created, everything will fall into my hands. I'm frail by nature, with asthma flaring up often, prone to colds, and I also have heart issues. Managing the entire inheritance is too much for me. If I become seriously ill, it will create serious problems for the business, Cameron asked, clearly worried. That's when his father presented a bold idea. What if you were to marry? You can't entrust the responsibility to just anyone. A wrong decision could make everything we've built disappear. If you marry her, she would gain inheritance rights and easily access all the money and documents that should rightfully be yours. If you guide her as a leader, she could quickly learn the management of the company and the handling of money. Cameron was stunned by the suggestion. Marry Sophie? It seemed unrealistic at first, but the more Cameron considered it, the more a glimmer of possibility appeared. Marrying Sophie and having someone to share the responsibility would certainly ease the heavy burden on me. But we can't just assume that she will accept it. Of course, it must be a mutual decision based on respect for each other and an understanding of what's at stake here. This isn't just a traditional marriage, but a partnership for the future of the Jones family and everyone who depends on it. Donald explained, his voice weak but firm. This conversation left Cameron with much to ponder. The proposal from his father was drastic, but the situation called for an unconventional solution. The idea of sharing his life and responsibilities with Sophie, who had already shown so much strength and compassion, didn't seem that far-fetched. Perhaps this was the answer to protecting the family's legacy and securing the company's future.
The next morning, when I arrived at the Jones estate, I was immediately greeted by the butler and given a message from Cameron. I was asked to meet him in the office. Curious and a bit anxious about the sudden summons, I walked down the hallway, wondering what Cameron wanted to discuss so early. Entering the office, I found Cameron standing, looking more nervous than I had ever seen him, holding a bouquet of flowers. The scene was so unusual that it momentarily distracted me from my own confusion. Cameron, what's happened? I asked, my voice tinged with curiosity and concern as I took in his state. Cameron took a deep breath, trying to calm his own nerves. Sophie, last night, my father and I had a long discussion about the company, the future, and how to ensure the well-being of everyone who depends on Jones. He paused, then, as a gesture of peace, extended the bouquet before continuing. We came to one conclusion. It might seem a bit unconventional. I took the flowers, feeling even more confused but touched by the gesture. A plan? What do you mean? I mean, we've come up with a solution to protect the company and also safeguard our family from Daniel's threat. But it requires a major decision. A partnership. My father wants to remove Daniel from the position of heir, which would mean all his money and assets would fall to me. Everything, every building he owns, and all his personal assets, would become mine. I can't manage all of it on my own, and I don't have a trustworthy person to help me with all this. So, I came up with a simple solution. My father trusts you immensely, Sophie. And if you could easily access my inheritance, you would help manage everything. What I'm trying to say is, my father suggested it, and I agreed. The best, most direct, and simplest way to implement this would be for us to get married. The last part was said in a rush, almost like a whisper. He seemed afraid of my reaction, avoiding eye contact. For a moment, the office fell silent, filled only with the sound of our breathing. I was stunned, unable to respond. The suggestion was so unexpected, so far from my understanding of the current situation, that it took me a few seconds to grasp its meaning. Cameron, this is a proposal for marriage, for your inheritance? My voice mixed surprise with disbelief. Are you serious? Yes, very serious. It might seem sudden, and I'm not seeking romantic love. It's a partnership to face the challenges we're facing together. I promise that everything will be conducted with respect and consideration for you and your decisions. Of course, you have time to think about it. Time to decide what's best for you, Cameron explained. He finally mustered the courage to meet my gaze, trying to convey sincerity and openness. Cameron's proposal left me standing at a crossroads I had never imagined. The weight of the decision, the potential impact on my life, and the responsibilities such a union would bring were overwhelming. Yet at the same time, Cameron's sincerity and vulnerability, the urgency of the situation, and the possibility of making a significant difference stirred a whirlwind of conflicting emotions within me. Cameron noticed my distress, seeing the complexity of my emotions on my face. He took a moment to gather his thoughts, aware that the next step would determine the course of our lives. Sophie, he began. His voice was more resolute, yet filled with emotion. When I said I wasn't seeking romantic love, it was because I didn't want to impose expectations on what our relationship should be. But, he paused, searching for the right words. It doesn't mean I can't develop feelings for you. In fact, I already have feelings. Cameron's confession took me by surprise, making my heart beat faster. The bouquet, his nervousness, everything began to take on a new, unexpected significance. Cameron, are you saying you have feelings for me? My voice was barely a whisper, struggling to grasp the depth of his confession. Yes, Sophie. It wasn't planned, and I certainly didn't want to complicate things with emotions that weren't asked for. But seeing your strength, your kindness, and how much you care about my father over these past few days has made me see you differently. Yes, bringing this bouquet was not just a gesture of reconciliation, but also a way for me to express something I'm trying to understand, Cameron explained with a gaze full of sincerity. I fell silent for a moment, processing what Cameron had said. The idea of a convenience marriage was one thing, but the possibility of it growing into a true love was something entirely different. I looked at Cameron and saw him not just as a man who needed my help, but as someone who could potentially be a true partner in every sense of the word. Cameron, this is a lot to process, I finally said. My voice was calm but firm. I need time to think about all of this, your proposal, your feelings, and mine as well. I deeply respect what you're trying to do for your family and your company. And it would be a lie to say I don't feel anything for you. But marriage? That's something we need to consider very carefully. Cameron nodded. He seemed relieved to have been honest about his feelings and grateful that I was willing to consider his proposal. Of course, Sophie. Take all the time you need. I'm here for whatever you decide, he said with a gentle smile. I responded to his smile, and we both acknowledged that, regardless of what the future held, the shared moment had changed our relationship. As the weeks went by, the atmosphere within the Jones estate experienced subtle yet significant changes. The mutual affection between Cameron and me was strengthened by daily challenges and shared small joys, blossoming into a deep friendship. My constant presence not only brought a new sense of peace to Donald's final days, but also served as a beacon of stability amid the storm stirred up by Daniel's relentless actions. Daniel's temptations and interference only grew stronger with time. It was as if he was determined to test my resilience and the depth of my commitment to Cameron. However, the strengthening bond between Cameron and me acted as a shield against Daniel's attacks, allowing us to face adversity together. Nearly a year after the initial proposal, Cameron and I got married in an intimate ceremony attended by close friends and loyal members of the Jones team. This event not only celebrated the love and partnership we had built, but also symbolized a new chapter for the company and everyone who depended on it. Our bond had now become a symbol of stability and hope for the future. Daniel, whose presence at the ceremony was marked by an evident coldness, saw his discontent and resentment grow even more after the marriage. Rather than accepting the new reality, he viewed me and Cameron's union as an even greater obstacle to his plans and ambitions. The hatred he harbored was not only directed at the thwarted attempts to seize control of the company but also at the apparent love and respect me and Cameron had for each other, becoming a quiet poison threatening the harmony of the Jones family. Nevertheless, Daniel's threats became increasingly rare. Shortly after the wedding, Donald secretly changed his will, leaving his entire estate to Cameron and me. A few months later, he passed away, ensuring that this secret would be revealed when the will was read. His passing was a time of deep sorrow for the family and everyone touched by his work and generosity. In the following days, as Cameron and I supported each other through our grief, the tension in the Jones estate clearly escalated, peaking when the family's lawyer arrived to read the will. Daniel, whose recent presence was characterized by a mix of provocation and greedy anticipation, approached the meeting with arrogant confidence. Despite his past actions, he seemed to believe that his inheritance rights were an undeniable birthright. When the lawyer finally began reading the will, Daniel listened carefully, unable to hide his triumphant expression. However, his confidence shattered into shock and disbelief when the lawyer announced that Donald had revoked Daniel's inheritance rights due to actions contrary to the values and legacy of the Jones family. The document stated that the majority of the estate, including control of the company, was to be divided between Cameron and, surprisingly to some, me. This was in recognition of their dedication and contributions to the family. "This cannot be true," Daniel shouted with a voice trembling with anger and disbelief. Holding the paper with shaking hands, he continued, "They can't do this to me. I am his son." Maintaining his composure amidst Daniel's emotional storm, Cameron responded firmly. Father made his decision based on who he truly believed would uphold the values and legacy of the Jones family. His decision reflects not only a desire for responsible ethical leadership of the company but also an acknowledgement that actions have consequences. Unable to accept the reality of the situation, Daniel shifted his gaze from me to Cameron. His anger transformed into a bitter recognition of reality. "You two planned this. You took everything from me." Until that moment, I had remained silent, my expression a mix of sorrow and resolve as I watched the unfolding scene. Finally, I spoke. "Daniel, no one here has been plotting against you. This is your father's decision, based on your own actions. You still have the chance to build something for yourself. But you need to start making better decisions."
The announcement of Donald Jones's will not only sealed the fate of the company but also reaffirmed the principles and character that define a person's true legacy. For Cameron and Sophie, it was both a vote of trust and a challenge for the future. In the months following the reading of Donald Jones's will, Daniel fell into a downward spiral. His finances crumbled under the weight of debts accumulated from hasty decisions and an unsustainable lifestyle. When his options ran out, he swallowed his pride and sought out Cameron. Not as a brother seeking reconciliation but as a desperate man looking for work. Despite the past wounds and emotional complexities, Cameron offered Daniel a position as the company secretary. For Daniel, it was an opportunity to rebuild his life, though shadowed by past arrogance. Against all medical predictions, Cameron lived far longer than expected. He was a testament to the power of love and happiness. On Sophie's side, not only did she find a life partner, but she also found a business partner in Cameron. Together, they created a family and brought 3 children into the world. Their children grew up embodying the values of compassion, ethics, and dedication that had guided their parents' lives. Sophie embraced her role within the Jones family and company with tireless dedication. With Cameron's support and encouragement, she learned about management and strived to improve her knowledge and skills. Over time, she became an outstanding leader, respected not only for her intellect and abilities but also for her generous heart. Under her leadership, the Jones Company not only thrived as a business but also expanded its social impact, continuing the tradition of supporting the community and charities that had been so important to Donald. The story of Sophie and Cameron, characterized by challenges, triumphs, and love flourishing in unexpected circumstances, became a legacy in itself. They showed that, even in the face of adversity, it is possible to build something enduring and meaningful for future generations. Their children grew up not only knowing the stories of their grandparents and parents but also practicing the values that underpin everything the Jones family represents. Sophie and Cameron's life, filled with love, overcoming challenges, and shared successes, became a source of inspiration for all who knew them. They demonstrated that with compassion, resilience, and true partnership, it is possible to create a bright future not just for one family but for an entire community. Thus, the legacy begun by Donald Jones continued. It stood as a testament to the power of unwavering dedication to values that define the true meaning of love, ethics, family, and success. If this story has captivated you, please show your support by hitting like and subscribing to our community. Your support is the driving force behind our ability to continue delivering wonderful stories almost every day. Stay tuned so you don't miss the next incredible tale coming to your screen. We deeply appreciate your support. Until next time, goodbye.